Okay, welcome back to the United Pubcast, the podcast of the official Man United Supporters Club here in Sydney for your Villarreal preview. It doesn't seem that long ago we were actually doing a Villarreal preview/review in the Europa League final when Sydney was open and we're watching the match at a pub. The last time I have been in a pub was that Europa League final a few months ago, but we are living in a different world now. Josh, late replacement again for Larry. How are you, mate?
Yeah, really well. And you just said Villarreal was the last time we were in a pub, and it feels so long ago that it feels like we've been in lockdown for ages, and we have, but we only went into lockdown probably moments after that Villarreal game because we missed all the internationals. So yeah, looking like it's going to be a finish line, and soon we'll be watching games in the pub. Touch wood.
Fingers crossed. Well, we'll get into the sort of the Villarreal preview and team selection, what it means for Solskjaer, but just sort of cast your mind back to when we had that Europa League final. Okay, it wasn't a Champions League final, but it was a massive match. I'm just thinking, okay, it's a European final, so it's huge. But you do look at the situation we currently find ourselves in and currently Solskjaer finds himself in. And I'm not saying the second group stage match of a Champions League is bigger than the Europa League final, but in a scenario where we potentially lose this match, I think it almost is bigger than the Europa League final in terms of what it could mean. Because if we're on the brink of sort of going out of the Champions League, you lose sort of 4 matches in a row, 3 matches in a row at Old Trafford. Someone get out the stats. I can't tell you the last time that happened. So I'm just thinking, could you put it in a category as being bigger than the Europa League final, or is that a little bit sort of reactionary?
I think it's probably a little bit reactionary, but there's no doubt about it. It's a massive game, especially if you go into this game and you lose it. You've got Atlanta, who are probably the toughest team we're going to face in this group, back to back, and they're probably equivalent to the Red Bull Leipzig last year in the sense that you could probably beat them 3 or 4-0 at home. Especially with the pressure on Solskjaer, you could very well lose 3 or 4-0 at their place.
Yeah, well, it's very hard. Well,
it's a massive game, especially in the context of the weekend.
I think what was the draw in the first game? I think Atalanta and Villarreal had a draw, didn't they? So
I think it was 1-1.
Yeah, well, we'll get into team selection now. Just a few comments, a few boys joining us. Good evening, Andy. Hope you're well, mate. And Rob as well. Hope you're keeping well, mate. Rob's obviously live on It's a Football Thing later on tonight. So, Rob, feel free to put the link to that video in the chat. But hope all our listeners are keeping well. And if you are tuned in, please do leave a like on the video. But we will go on to sort of team selection. And here we are every single week. Team selection, centre of midfield. Who's he picking? The discussion will always be Fred and McTominay, but I just want your opinion now as, I wouldn't say the tide is turning, but there is maybe a little bit more pressure, especially from sort of people you don't usually get it from, let's call a spade, saying Gary Neville, Paul Scholes, etc. Gary Neville sort of questioning the style of play, etc. And when he speaks, he holds a little bit more weight. Whether his opinion's more valid or not, that's another debate. But when he speaks, it's got a lot of weight, especially in regards to Manchester United. The Man United manager will definitely listen. So just look at that and you think, okay, it's big game, must win. So Solskjaer in that state will revert to McTominay and Fred, and you can understand that. However, has he almost backed himself into a corner where some of this pressure is mounting and he could change things, especially, look, he's a football person, he's a manager, he's an adult. He saw what happened on Saturday that wasn't good enough. So I'm thinking, is there a situation, and I ask this every week, and it ends up always being McTominay and Fred, but is there a situation this week where he does change it and whether one of them gets dropped or both of them get dropped?
I don't think so, and hear me out on this. I think it's more the case going into the first Champions League result, obviously where we lost against Young Boys. I think this game for him is more of a sense that we can't lose it. We can't lose the game, and I think he'd be so cautious in his approach to that, but he'd still revert to Scott and Fred, or McFred as we call him. It's a must. It's a must not lose game, I think, in Solskjaer's eyes, over a must win, really. You lose that game, you've got a bit of a mountain to climb, as we said at the start of the podcast, with, the 2 biggest matches back-to-back against Atlanta. The defence pretty much picks itself, as we're probably going to go into in a bit more detail with the injuries. So I think you'll probably just need that cautious approach. Having said that, with Maguire injured, Shaw injured, Wan-Bissaka suspended, but you'll need probably, you say reliability, where obviously reliability cost us at the weekend, but reliability in the sense of what's worked well for him collectively over the course of the past season or so.
Well, we're obviously frustrated. We have different opinions to the manager on who should play. He's the manager of the football club. Is it the right decision for him to stick to his gut, or should he take a risk? And yes, Manchester United should always sort of live on the edge and play with an element of risk. But is there a situation where, while we don't agree with it, it's the manager's right, it's the right decision for him to stick by his guns, or should he not cave to pressure, but in my opinion, sort of caved to a little bit of public pressure and fan opinion and play with what we want to see.
I'm probably more, for him being cautious in this respect, and I think that's just due to how the first game went. It's great. It's great games to take a risk, and if you take a risk, you play well, and you lose a game, you sort of say, you know what, fair enough. But I think so many times we always say the pressure's been on Solskjaer, and whenever we've said that, and I think someone said this in the forum the other day, saying, can someone say Solskjaer's job's under threat if we lose the next game? And what happens? He ends up winning the next 10. And we've forgotten about everything for the next 2 or 3 months. I think it's one of those situations where just stick to his guns and touch wood. We'll probably draw out quite a good, I say good, but probably quite a disciplined performance. I don't say good performance because I think Neville's right in what he's been saying, in the sense that United don't really draw out so many good team performances over the past season or so. And especially in recent games as well, we're more driven around, moments of brilliance, which I think he's correct in that sense. It's what's, gotten us over the line in recent games. We look to Wolves in particular with the Greenwood finish.
Yeah, no, it was hard to argue. Gary Neville, I'm sure everyone has watched it, but go on to Sky Sports YouTube page, you'll see sort of the Gary Neville podcast. He does speak in depth, and urge everyone to give it a listen. Andy here saying, think it depends on how the Submarine / Villarreal line up. If they're going to be attacking, he'll be McFred as standard, which, I think he will, but look, I don't want to discuss McFred anymore, but here we are. Not even about Elliot, saying not even about caving to pressure, more so looking at the performances and making tough tactical decisions. And on that my tactical decision there, or the tough tactical decision, is my next point in regards to Jadon Sancho, and nothing to do with Sancho. However, if he does choose, I hate saying it, but it always just rolls off the tip of the tongue. If he does pick McFred, that's Paul Pogba on the left wing. And we've sort of all have our concerns on what that does to the balance of the team when we have a 75 million left winger sitting on the bench. I'm just thinking, Jadon Sancho doesn't have to prove himself in the Champions League. Okay, he might have to prove himself at Man United, but he's performed at Champions League level in must-win Champions League games for Dortmund. He's not only performed well, he's produced. I remember scored a screamer in the Nou Camp type thing. So he can perform at this level. I'm just thinking, I can always understand the case for a manager trying to bet in a play here or there, but 2 years later, he's still trying to bet in Donny van der Beek. There's just kind of come a time where Jadon Sancho is just playing. He's not going to get the minutes if he doesn't play. So in this situation, can you see him revert into Paul Pogba on the left wing, or is it just time to throw Sancho when you spent the money on him, which I completely agree, it is the time. But in Solskjaer's thinking, how do you think he lines it up?
I think he'll play Sancho. And I don't think it's a case of just because Pogba's quite effective on the left, as we saw at the weekend. I'm going to throw a controversial opinion here, and I've seen a lot of people saying Solskjaer's man management of Sancho has been poor. I think it's been perfect. I don't know what your opinion is. Yeah. If I was him, if I was managing United, and you've got, that's a dream, obviously, but you've got a player that's, low on form, obviously not had the impact, that's been associated with his price tag. It can be really, really dangerous to throw him in game after game after game after game, waiting and hoping for a performance. Sometimes you just need to step aside, not so much as resting, but allow him to sort of reflect and watch from the sidelines on the bench, sort of watch the game from not a fan's perspective, but more as an outsider to see how he thinks he can impact the game, and obviously bring that into practice. And the next time he gets the opportunity, obviously he's been flawed in some respects. I mean, the young boys game, I thought he was really unlucky, and that's just due to the nature of Wan-Bissaka getting sent off. He couldn't really make that impact, but he's proven in the Champions League, and hopefully with 11 men, hopefully lasting the full 90 minutes, he can make that impact if he starts tomorrow.
I think that's where you speak in regards to Solskjaer's management of him. I think it's very hard, and obviously hard for us to sort of differentiate individuals in the team. So we see the team performing bad, and we say, throw this individual in, he'll fix things. But pretend that same individual is having the same performance levels, but we're winning. Okay, well, then that's great management. Everyone will say that's good for Solskjaer, taking his time with Sancho. But when we're losing, we're thinking, no, Sancho's the answer. And I think you have to find a balance where Sancho's performances could be, they could have been worse in a winning team. They're not there in a losing team. So it's one of those ones you do have to take every case sort of individually. But the issue I think Solskjaer faces with Jadon Sancho is the evidence of his last big money signing, Donny van der Beek, is still betting in. So that's a little bit hard against, or something we can use against Solskjaer in regards to the Sancho debate. But my mum is tuned in and she thinks Solskjaer should go with his gut feeling. Unfortunately, his gut feeling isn't working for him at the moment. But Elliot as well saying, great way to give Sancho the chance to get rid of the doubters. And I think that some people, maybe not in the Man United fan base, but there is maybe in terms of rivals. And yes, we shouldn't care what rivals think, but the media will sort of feed off the back of that. They're starting to sort of mention Sancho as being a poor signing, and there's no sort of substance to that. But that will be a tag that is somewhat sort of will sort of stick to him eventually if he doesn't start playing. So there will come a time, as you mentioned, I'm quite not a fan of the treatment of Sancho so far, but I can understand it, and there are sort of definite positives to it. But there will come a time, and I hope it's this match against Villarreal, where Solskjaer just bites the bullet and says, look, you're in. You've done it in the Champions League. Now do it for us. But we will move on to, you mentioned the back four and say it almost picks itself because of the injuries. And I think we can see the goals. I think we've only got one clean sheet this season, but I think we have been defending better. Just we've given up a couple of goals. That is football. But Aaron Wan-Bissaka is obviously suspended. So Diego Dalot obviously comes in at right back. Luke Shaw and Maguire at the time of recording, we haven't heard too much about the injuries. We assume that both of them are out. Now, we're talking about this as a sort of a must-win Champions League game. You go into a must-win Champions League game with three of your back four missing. This is not an ideal scenario. Whether your opinion is we're stronger without those players or not, it just is a big blow with only one of your back four there.
I think in terms of the back four, you probably bring Lindelof in alongside Varane. I agree with what Larry said on the last podcast. Personally, I thought they looked stronger as a pairing in that game than Maguire did. But I think obviously Maguire copped a bit of an injury for probably about 15 or so minutes of that game where he did look a bit careless at times. But it does pick himself. The only thing I worry about is where Dalot's quite controlled. I think he brought that much creatively going forward, which we probably missed with Shaw at times. But obviously a bit more balance in defence, I'd say. You've pinpointed a few times this season with Luke Shaw. He's just been a bit lazy. He's just not chased his marker. He's just been he's nothing. And we saw that at the weekend. When he made that run forward, mistimed the tackle, and he had to, he was spent running backwards. Dalot brings that balance.
Yeah, well, Lindelof and Varane. Look, Maguire is definitely the number one choice for me alongside Varane. But it will be interesting to see, and kind of off the back of Harry Maguire's form, kind of exciting to see, because I think Lindelof, you take the armband off Harry Maguire and you look at performances, Lindelof probably deserves a run now next to Rafael Varane. So it will be interesting. And while Tellez, I assume he's fit, but he wasn't on the bench against Aston Villa, so I'm not sure about his fitness status, but let's hope he is fit. But in his sort of returning against West Ham, and again, he was off the back of a long layoff, so you can't criticise him too much, but he wasn't fantastic against West Ham. He obviously got subbed, and rightly so. But if he starts this game, he's going to need a performance, because now, okay, we're thinking, okay, we need to rotate a little bit for fitness, but also one or two injuries. But forget that. This is, like we said, a must-win Champions League game pretty much. It's almost got that cup final feel. And Andy's saying his gut feeling didn't miss the penalty. It was Bruno. Solskjaer's copping grief for a lot of random stuff out of his control. Which, look, I've made that point countless times. I think a lot of players do need... Solskjaer needs to take responsibility, of course, but for execution of skills and shots and conceding goals, like in terms of errors, that is obviously not Solskjaer. He's not telling the players, go out there and miss this shot, please. That's obviously not on the manager. It is on the player. And just before we just get into one more point before Solskjaer and just sort of wrap up the Champions League stuff, Rob's got comment here. Need a 4-3-3 for a change. Need to show a statement performance. We're at home with after a great window past Europa League final. We need to show that we've improved. And I think we've definitely improved on paper. And at the moment, I think I haven't looked at the table, but we're not far off top of the table. So it's hard to sort of gauge that improvement. I think around Christmas time, we can see how far we've travelled from the Europa League final. But at the moment, obviously does sort of feel like a low point. Obviously 3 sort of defeats on the bounce, or 4 defeats on the bounce if we go into this one against Villarreal. George saying must-win game only means one thing for Ollie, McTominay and Fred in a double pivot, which is what we've discussed earlier, George, and just thinking it's a wrong decision for us, but you can understand from a manager's point of view. It's a tough one, and I think a lot of that will depend on Jadon Sancho. If he wants to play Sancho, well, Paul Pogba's going to play, so that puts Paul Pogba into the midfield. But if he doesn't want to play Sancho, well, then he has an easy decision of McTominay and Fred and Paul Pogba on the left. And look, I'm not, I wouldn't say a fan of it, but Andy's saying, can we ban the term? Oh, actually, the term double pivot, I agree. I hate that term, but it is something that's used there. But I don't mind playing with the two sitting there as long as they play well and play it in the right way. Just sitting there and going side to side. yeah, that's when I use the term double pivot. But I agree there, Andy. But we'll move on to Solskjaer just before we wrap up and to sort of touch on the other sort of interesting Champions League game. We alluded to it at the start, what a big game it is for Solskjaer. I'm just thinking, worst case scenario, look, we're both confident, we're positive. Okay, we're going to go win this game. Worst case scenario, it's a football match. Villarreal are a good team. If they beat us, I don't know what the situation is like after a draw. I think a draw will sort of, our opinion will be swayed by the performance. But let's say a situation where we lose the game. Okay, Solskjaer's not losing his job the next morning, and he shouldn't. However, are you looking at potentially then what we did with Jose Mourinho in terms of it just becomes untenable? Not untenable in regards to a dressing room situation, but if you look at it, are we going to win the Premier League? I know we've joked about it at the start of the season, but overall, you probably think we're not going to win the Premier League. We're out of the League Cup. FA Cup is a lottery. 2 games from 2. If you lose 2 from 2 in the Champions League, you're not out of the group. You could go win match day 3, 4, 5, and 6 and go through. But the evidence would suggest you're not going to go through in the Champions League. And if we're facing the Champions League exit in September, okay, fan pressure, that's one thing. But is the club then going to start putting pressure on Solskjaer? Because that's not a good position for the manager to be in after a few years.
I think so, yeah. I think the pressure is definitely on him more so this season. And I think that's just due to the signings that were made. But I don't think it'll be a case of this game. They'll have to evaluate it and make a decision on him. I think it'd be more, towards the Christmas sort of period. I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. You look at it last season, we won our first 2 Champions League games and didn't progress. We could lose our first 2 Champions League and 2 first Champions League games and easily progress. It's not, it's not untenable, especially how the first result went with Atlanta and Villarreal. You win this game. And Atlanta drop points to top of the group. So, who knows? Who knows what could happen? But I think the pressure is definitely on him. And I think where I agree with what Gary Neville said in the sense that United are being driven at the moment from individual performances, I don't think it's impossible for United to sort of create a more even balance in team performances over individual brilliance. I think we're just waiting on something to connect, and I think it will happen this season. Whether it happens too late to forge a challenge that's sustainable for the rest of the season, and even a cup run, let's say a Champions League cup run that takes us all the way, who knows? But I don't think it's as doom and gloom as fans are saying on a lot of forums that we're not going to mount anything. The reason we signed Ronaldo is to appease the fans, and it's just highlighted a lot of weaknesses. I think that's a load of bogus in my opinion. I think we're just waiting on something to gel. It takes time for players to integrate to each other, and I know we have tacticians for that, and we have training regimes to sort of get that into practice before a match day. But I'm not saying give Solskjaer time because we've given him time. I'm saying just hold off and give these players a little bit more time, in a sense of not just 2 months into the season or a month and a half into the season to write us off. Because look at West City. Look at West City were last season.
Yeah, I think it's so early in the season now. Like it's the end of September. Like we're going to have bad spells of form later on in the season. Chelsea's going to have bad spells. City's going to eventually, get knocked out of a tournament or go through a bad run.
Exactly. And look at us last season. Look at the start we made last season, and I know we forged a 1-week title challenge where we were top of the league for a couple of weeks. But look at City this season as well. They lost the first game to Spurs. They dropped points to Southampton, and all of a sudden they beat Chelsea at the weekend, playing all right. Organised is what I'd say. I didn't think there was much. I didn't think they were world class in terms of quality. I just thought they were extremely organised and out. Fair play to Guardiola. He outclassed Tuchel, but all of a sudden City are world beaters, and it will take a lot to beat them again. And Chelsea all of a sudden have a challenge on their hands. Fans are fickle, and it's not over. That's what I will say.
No, definitely. Now, just before we wrap up, you just mentioned sort of Pep. I want to touch on Manchester City's game, but Andy's saying things would have to go very pear-shaped for them to get rid of him here before April or May. And yeah, look, it would be the wrong decision in my opinion to get rid of him. I'm definitely not discussing sort of getting him out the door and sacking him. I'm just thinking almost just how United work in regards to a contractual thing. When it became mathematically impossible for Louis van Gaal to make the Champions League, or David Moyes, he was sort of sacked. So I'm just thinking if we are on the verge of getting knocked out of the Champions League, what that sort of does in the line, sort of in the thinking of Woodward, not that he's in the job for much longer, but the Glazers as well. And Moyes mentions the Glazers here, saying if he doesn't get top 4, he'll be off in the summer. Qualifying for Europe is more important for the Glazers, and all that is matters to them. And look, we'll have that answer in May. We don't have that answer now, but look, that's why we don't want to lose against Villarreal this week, because that might give us an earlier answer if we're getting knocked out of the Champions League this week, or this season. But fingers crossed. Look, are you confident going into this match? Like, in terms of, we are at home to Villarreal. It is a team we should be winning, but we said that in the Europa League final, and we didn't get the job done.
I'm confident more because of the pressure Solskjaer's under. I mean, when Solskjaer's under pressure, he draws out, a fantastic performance and a fantastic result. Not so much on recent form. I think, it'll be a very tough game, but I think he'll get us over the line. It'll be quite convincing as well.
No, fingers crossed. And look, Ronaldo, he's made for the Champions League. Okay, I said he's going to score every single game. It almost looked like that, and that didn't happen against Aston Villa. But at home at Old Trafford, under the lights, Champions League nights, I'm sure someone get his stats up. There's always these stats pop up against him against Spanish opposition. These teams that he has scored 10 goals against, 15 goals against. I'm sure he's got a great record against Villarreal. Maybe he doesn't, but I'm sure he does. So he's made for the Champions League. Just here, Moyes just confident with the makeshift back four as well, Tom. Well, that's the thing. We sort of discussed that, and I'm thinking, well, in some people's eyes, we're actually better with this back four. I don't agree, but there's a very sort of strong case. I think Tellez is a far better footballer than Luke Shaw, and Luke Shaw was the best left back in the world last year, and rightly so. But I'd really like to see Tellez.
Tellez is injured. Do you reckon Phil Jones comes in?
Well,
if Tellez is injured, do you reckon Phil Jones gets a
well, I'm thinking if Tellez isn't fit, just in terms of that scenario, and look, someone might have the answer to this, but let's draw up a scenario where Tellez isn't fit, because Wan-Bissaka's out suspended. So, okay, Delot is one who can go left or right. But would you push Delot to the left-hand side and find a makeshift right back in some way? Or maybe a Lindelof to right back and Eric Bailly in? Or do you change the system completely and go three at the back?
I think he'd revert to Lindelof at right and put Bailly in the centre.
Actually, I think he's played Lindelof. I think he has played Lindelof, or was it that game against PSG? Eric Bailly played at right back and then got subbed after like 20 minutes.
I don't think, I know Moyes said he'd play back three if he's injured. I don't think he would. I don't think he'd play back three.
Well, Moyes saying back three if he's injured. Look, time will tell if he is injured or not. And he's just had a discussion about Sancho as well. And we both think Sancho, one, should play at left wing, but definitely do want him to play at left wing. But we'll just touch on Manchester City before we wrap up. It's obviously a Man United podcast, but there is a big match, and you could argue the size of the clubs in terms of PSG and Man City, but when you do look at quality, two are sort of the most, I wouldn't say most exciting teams, but sort of all eyes are definitely always on PSG and Manchester City in Champions League games, and they are playing each other. And it's the dream. Obviously, a couple of months ago, this could have been Ronaldo versus Messi in terms of City and PSG. It hasn't worked out that way, thank God, but it's a big game. And look, it's not about it's not match day 6 and one of them is going to get knocked out or anything. It's just going to be a good game of football. One, for the quality on show, the managers on show, the spectacle. I don't know if it's in Paris or in Manchester. I think it must be in Paris if United are at home. I'm not quite sure about that.
Yeah,
but
it's in Paris. It's actually a tasty affair, because if it's all to play for, they play each other the last game of the group stages. So it could be a case of one of them, chasing qualification if other results go their way.
Oh, it's huge.
It'll be quite interesting tie at this stage.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating because, as I said, teams like that will have bad spells in a season. They're going to drop points that they could drop match day 4 and match day 5 and have to go into that match day sort of 6 winning. But Mike's saying El Cashigo, and that's where you don't want to go in that match day 6 and have those two teams sort of making a deal under the table. However, in terms of Qatar and Saudi Arabia, I'm not sure those two teams would make a deal with each other, but definitely is sort of termed El Cashigo. And Andy saying Phil Jones right back. Well, I don't think Phil Jones is even in the Champions League squad. I know he's back, but I remember when the Champions League squad was announced, I didn't see Phil Jones' name in there. So that will be interesting, but you obviously can make 5 substitutions in the Champions League match. So it will be interesting. And Moyes, just before we wrap up, just a quick one on the wing-backs. Reckon Delot and Tellez are much better to have with Ronnie. Look, that's something I completely agree with. I think in terms of getting the ball in the box, Tellez got a great delivery, and Delot at times should have a great delivery. Maybe doesn't often produce it, but obviously has that ability over Wan-Bissaka. However, my concern at the moment is since Ronaldo has come in, that's been my dream. Okay, get the ball wide, whip it in. We're getting the ball wide and just refusing to cross it almost. And Ronaldo isn't sort of kicking up a stink yet. But I think there will come a time where he's saying, what are you doing? Get the ball in the box, because we're not really getting the ball in the box. From your feelings on our fullback situation when they're getting that final third so far?
Especially in the past few games, just look very static. Wan-Bissaka's got in some fantastic positions recently, and he's just not, delivered. Same with Shaw at times, really. I thought Shaw's been maybe not so much in the first Champions League game, because I thought he was all right at times going forward. But they've just been a bit, cautious.
Yeah.
Crazy, especially if we've got like someone that's so good aerially in the box. It's crazy. Yeah. That's just that you play to his strengths.
Andy's saying here in regards to Phil Jones, homegrown, so it doesn't have to be named. That's a good point. However, which is a very good point. My thinking with that is, I forget, and I don't have the rule book. Someone may be able to correct me, but I think you need 8 homegrown players. But I think you need to name those homegrown players. I think maybe the under-23 players you don't need to list. But I could be wrong. But maybe Phil Jones is eligible. But I thought the ones you didn't have to list were the under-23 players or under-21s. I think you had to reach a certain quota in your registrations of homegrown players. But that very well might be the case. I'm not sure. Maybe someone can leave that in the comments. But just about wraps it up. Hopefully everyone did enjoy the podcast or the YouTube show, whatever you want to call it. A reminder that we are obviously still on your podcast app, so our longer episodes, so not this one, but sort of our match reviews. And if we have a guest, etc., they still go up on our podcast app. So just search United Pubcast on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, etc. And so make sure you subscribe on your podcast app. Speaking of podcast, did you listen to the Sir Alex one, Josh, or not yet?
No, I want to make sure I've got like a lot of time on my hands to listen to it. I think it's like an hour 15, and I don't really have that much time at the moment with work. So I think tomorrow morning I've got maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours before work. So I'll go for a walk and then listen to it, no disturbances. But I heard it's really good. I think he finally puts that Wesley Sneijder rumor to bed, which is what I'm personally looking forward to hearing.
Look, that was my point. I did listen. I did sort of get away for an hour and a half today. I did go for a walk and listen, and it was fascinating. It's always hard, sort of what they're going to talk about. You think, how can they cram it all into an hour? So there's certain things you think, well, why didn't they ask that, or why did they ask that? But it was a very good chat. I really enjoyed it, and the main part, which I'm sure everyone has seen the quote, so I'm not spoiling anything. But the Wesley Sneijder, wasted 6 years of my life because I thought we're on the verge of signing him every window, and Sir Alex obviously was never interested. So I think it just goes to show, when those rumours start popping up around transfer window time, Wesley Sneijder was nailed on to sign for United every single week, every single window. At the end of the day, Sir Alex just wasn't interested. So the story was just made up. So every time we go live with the United are interested in this player, who knows? We're definitely not in the know. But hopefully everyone did enjoy the video. Thank you, Mike. Great job, lads, and up the Reds. Look, we're going to need a big performance on Thursday. It's Thursday morning our time, obviously in Sydney. I think it's a 5 a.m. kickoff, which... not great, but it's been worse.
No, exactly. And I think Larry will definitely be up for this one. I think we'll all be hopefully praying.
Look, it definitely has a big game feel.
Yeah,
definitely a big game feel. And I look back at the game against, not against a big game you have to win, but it will be it, especially for the players as well. I think there'll be an element of revenge as well. Not that there's anything personal against Villarreal, but the way that game went against Villarreal, obviously in the Europa League final, we're going to have to bounce back. And I'm sure that is sort of still eating away at the players. So thank you, everyone, for tuned in. Thank you for Josh for joining us. As I said, make sure you subscribed and hit a like on the video. That'd be truly appreciated. And then we'll chat to you on Thursday after the Villarreal match. And fingers crossed, we're not discussing any managerial issues. And we're just talking about Ronaldo breaking his own Champions League goal scoring record. But until then, I hope everyone has a good week, and we'll chat to you soon.